Our next here at 5. It was 6 weeks ago when a contaminated site along the Detroit River partially collapsed into the river. Tonight, the defenders breaking new information on the case along with some startling images to show how the situation has worsened.
Yeah, let's bring in Defender Karen Drew. And Karen, this is disturbing to say the least.
Oh, yes, it sure is, Kim and Devin. This is the site of contamination concern. Now, this is drone video from back on December 5th. You can see there was no hole there. Now, take a look at this. What happens? The defenders shot this video yesterday. You can see a massive hole has formed. The owner of the property was supposed to give the state a remediation plan. It was due on December 26th. Nothing's been handed in.
That's very irresponsible. I think it should be very concerning to the Eagle and EPA and all concerned.
Greg Ward is the president of the Detroit-Windsor Truck Ferry.
We know objectively there's contamination in the soil, and we know that soil is being eroded into the Detroit River every minute as the river water rushes against the soil.
We're talking about this spot along the Detroit riverfront, known as the Revere Copper Site. Listed for decades as a contaminated site due to its use of uranium and other dangerous chemicals back in the 40s during the race to build the world's first atomic bomb.
And they found all these chemicals in the soil. We know that's there. That's not somebody's memory, that's objective material, and all that's in the river right now. And more of it is going into the river as this sinkhole continues to progress.
Just yesterday, the defenders flew our drone over the area and look at the sinkhole size.
This is becoming very deep.
And it's a brighter green.
According to documents, Erickson's, who owns the site, had to submit a restoration plan to the state within 15 days of receiving this December 11th letter from Eagle. The defenders learning no remediation plan was ever sent in. The letter goes on to state, river sediments beneath the unauthorized fill material contains elevated concentrations of contaminants. Please consider an interim activity that would protect the now exposed shoreline.
All that river erodes into the soil continuously now that there's not a dock. Pretty soon we're going to have ice in the river. That's going to do further damage to the spill site.
Now, meantime, we did reach out to Erickson's, who owns the site, as well as Detroit Bulk, who leased the site and was storing all that aggregate that went into the river. We're waiting to hear back from them.
Yeah. But what about the water quality? I know we had reported that Eagle did some testing and it's okay.
That's what they said. And remember, they are the same ones who oversaw the 696 ooze situation. So definitely you want to take a look at this. I asked them for images. Take a look at this map. So there's 3 red arrows. The top red arrow, they did a test. The bottom red arrow, a test. And in the middle is actually where the collapse is. Well, Ward, among others, say if you take a really close look, that's not exactly where the collapse is. It's above that site. So that really isn't a true sample. Meantime, Eagle standing by the results. We are not letting go of this one. We are going to be
upstream. You're not getting a sampling of where the trouble is going.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Karen.
Well, some test results are in. There are metals, including uranium and cyanide, all detected in the soil and water samples at the Revere Copper site where the dock collapsed along the Detroit River.
EPA officials telling Local 4 those metals are below drinking water and soil cleanup criteria. But new tonight, something else was found exceeding the national standards. That something is lead. Let's bring in Local 4 Defender Karen Drew with what she's found, Karen.
Well, Devin and Kim, this is the latest. And I want to show you the statement that I received from EPA in regards to the Revere Copper site and their test results, reading in part. 1 lead sample exceeded EPA's removal management level. EPA is working with Eagle to identify any data gaps and plans to conduct further testing at the site. EPA says the lead does not pose a threat to the general public, but those who live and work along the river are worried as this sinkhole on the site keeps growing. This was 6 weeks ago. Now, take a look at the Local 4 Defender drone. What we caught, this is what it looks like now.
The sinkhole along the Detroit River continues to grow.
It's changing rapidly. 1, it's becoming more profound in the sinkhole, and 2, the color is quite bizarre. It's this green, funky color, which is different from the river.
Greg Ward runs the Detroit-Windsor Truck Ferry. He wants to see a cleanup plan in action before the sinkhole grows even larger.
And all that river erodes into the soil continuously now that there's not a dock. Pretty soon we're going to have ice in the river. That's going to do further damage to the spill site.
How?
Because the ice is very powerful.
Not only is the Jefferson Avenue site that leases to Detroit Bulk Storage under criticism for how it operated and allowed the dock collapse to occur, but get this. Revere Dock, the holding company for Erickson's, who owns the land, owes the city water and sewage department $62,825. After I contacted the city today, DWSD issued a statement reading in part, since October 2016, the parcels have been billed for drainage and the responsible party have not made any payments. The account was in the collections process. Now the city is pursuing legal action. And remember, the defenders reported Erickson's, along with Detroit Bulk, also was just cited for not meeting a December 26th deadline to send Eagle a restoration plan to fix this mess. Eagle continues to simply wait for the company's plan, but not issuing any fines, even though the deadline was not met.
And I did put calls in today to Revere, Erickson's, Detroit Bulk Storage, still waiting to get a response.
Yeah, that's crazy. And what about this water bill?
Can you believe?
I mean, can they just stop the service? If they haven't paid in 4 years, I feel like if it were mine, they would have been stopped.
Right, exactly. We're all paying our bills. Why aren't
Exactly.
they? But the problem is it's a drainage bill, so they're not actually getting water. They're supposed to pay for the drainage.
Service,
So they
right.
can't cut off the water service, so that's not an option. But still, clearly frustrating. No one's policing this. I mean, we've had the dock collapse. We've had them cited because they don't have the remediation, and now they're not paying their bills. And that's taxpayers' money.
Yeah, incredible.
We'll stay on top of it.
And we are going to post all of these important documents in the case at clickondetroit.com. You can read them for yourself at the Defenders page. All right, Karen.
Local 4 defenders holding city officials accountable after they admit they made a big mistake allowing a company to operate for years without a permit.
They didn't meet Eagle's deadline. Eagle didn't do anything. They didn't meet the city's deadline. The city didn't do anything. And they operated this business for years, and for some reason, everyone just let them do this.
I understand.
But how could this happen? How does a business open up shop along the Detroit riverfront and operate for years without permission from the city?
To make matters worse, the business and landowner were just cited for allowing confirmed contaminated soils into the Detroit River after its dock collapsed and a huge sinkhole formed.
Local 4 defender Karen Drew has the bombshell admission from the city on what went wrong.
Well, Kim and Jason, we are learning so much in this case. We've done digging and found no permit was ever issued for Detroit Bulk Storage and Revere Copper LLC to store aggregate on their land. But that didn't stop them for years. They have been storing construction material on this Jefferson Avenue property. So why didn't the city catch them? Well, just this afternoon, I sat down with Dave Bell, the director of the city's Building Safety, Engineering, and Environmental Department.
They had no permit or anything whatsoever to operate an outdoor storage facility on that property.
You've got Revere Copper, you got Detroit Bulk
Yes.
running a business
Yes.
for years without a permit, and it doesn't wind up on the city's radar.
It did not wind up on the city's radar, and we're taking steps to make sure this doesn't happen again.
According to the city, Revere Copper LLC bought the property back in 2015, leased it to Detroit Bulk Storage. The issue, neither had permission to store aggregate on the land. That didn't stop them. They did it for years, and the city apparently never noticed. The city says an inspector visited the site in 2018.
But I've got to ask, you've got an inspector that goes to a piece of property. There's a business running and it doesn't raise a red flag?
It's something we're still digging into.
After the heavy weight of the illegal construction material they were storing collapsed a dock this past November and then formed this huge sinkhole, the city said it issued a violation notice on December 6th.
They had to provide a structural analysis of the property as it relates to what's the storage of the material and how it affects the land underneath. And they also had to remove everything off that property.
And did they respond?
They did not respond.
So the city waited a month to issue a blight ticket.
The blight tickets were issued last week.
I find it interesting that the blight tickets are issued right when we started reporting on the story. Coincidence?
It is a coincidence.
The fact that this is happening, it's got to make me wonder how many other people are operating without a license.
That's
Can you say most assuredly that everyone else is operating legally?
No, I can't say that. Okay, but we are going to address every complaint that we have.
Where's the problem? Why isn't this being caught? Because there's got to be either a lack of people, lack of money, lack of concern.
Well, I really believe that you've got, we we send inspectors out. We believed that like most cities, getting out and inspecting every 2 years approximately is enough. But as we found out in this particular situation, working on the riverfront is every 2 years is not acceptable.
Clearly, it is not acceptable. Meantime, the city is charging the Revere Copper Detroit Bulk with a $3,000 a day violation until they either get all that material removed from the site or they get a permit that allows them to do that business. Now, we were out there today. They were open for business, actually followed a few trucks loading up, and so they're completely ignoring the city.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. And when you consider that, too, you brought it up in the story after, I mean, not doing anything is one thing, but who else is not doing anything? Who else are they not keeping an eye on?
And that really is worrisome. They said starting now, they're going to do annual inspections. They're going to do inspections of seawall every 5 years. They've got 10 inspectors. They have 15,000 commercial properties.
Ooh, that's going to take some time.
Yeah.
They hire some more people.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll stay on top of it.
Thanks, Karen.
We've got new test results in today from the second round of water quality testing related to the Detroit bulk storage partial land collapse that occurred 7 weeks ago.
Those results showing no impact to water quality. Let's bring in Local 4 defender Karen Drew, who's been covering this story with the latest. Karen.
Now, these tests were not done by state officials or the EPA. They were done by a private company. And today's results do provide some relief. While there was radium detected, it did not exceed the maximum contamination limit for drinking water.
Yes, the water is safe. It is as safe today as it was before the spill that took place on the riverfront as it is after the spill.
Great Lakes Water Authority released the second round of test results confirming no impact to water quality. But for those who work along the river, like Greg Ward, who runs the Detroit-Windsor Truck Ferry, he's still concerned, especially over the growing sinkhole on the site.
It's changing rapidly. One, it's becoming more profound in the sinkhole. And two, the color is quite bizarre. It's this green, funky color, which is different from the river. So where the sinkhole has developed a very deep area is in perfect alignment of where the physical lab building used to be, which stored uranium and cut uranium billets.
That lab was there back in the 40s, used in the race to build the world's first atomic bomb, which resulted in the soil being contaminated with a host of heavy metals, including uranium.
All right, so I did go through the lab report and noticed the water intake spots were the ones that were tested, but not that growing sinkhole on the property, and really that is what's concerning. Meantime, we do have news from Eagle. The state went over Detroit Bulk's remediation plan, saying the steps that it has taken so far are inadequate. Eagle issuing a statement late today, reading in part, a sinkhole at the site is developing rapidly in size and allowing additional materials from the property, including aggregate and contaminated soils, to enter the river. Eagle called for an expedited evaluation of the sinkhole and development of a plan to prevent further discharges of contaminated soils and aggregate into the river. And I remember yesterday, Kim, you were asking about that curtain, that barrier they put.
Right.
Eagle said on today's press release, they said it is not covering the entire area. It is not preventing it, and there's actually one spot where the bank has collapsed, and it's not.
Goodness.
It's not doing the job, so they're definitely concerned.
So what happens now?
Well, Revere Copper and Detroit Bulk have until January 24th to now enter a new idea, a new plan. So we'll see what they come up with. We're staying on top of this every day.
Incredible.
As I said earlier, unfortunately, every day there's a new development, and none of them have been all that great, although at least the water testing today.
That is a positive
it's a
note,
positive
so
step.
that is one good thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
We appreciate you staying on top of it. Meanwhile, the search for answers continues today along Detroit's riverfront, where a dock collapsed 9 weeks ago, spilling contaminated soil into the river.
A team from the EPA spent the day running a variety of tests at the site where Detroit Bulk Storage was leasing land but operating without a permit.
Local 4 defender Karen Drew was there. And Karen, any early results come in?
Well, official test results come in 2 weeks, but I did talk with some experts on the scene today, and they tell me that the radiation levels at this time appear to be considered acceptable and not above what we are exposed to in our regular daily lives. Still, though, there are many more questions than answers.
The question is simple. Is this site safe? Will the confirmed contaminated soils continue to spill into the river and ultimately affect the river and the public? That's the question this team from the EPA is trying to answer.
The downriver water intakes have been sampled, the sediment's been sampled, the Detroit River's been sampled, the embankment's been sampled, the pond has been sampled. All those results showed that there were no threat to the public.
But even with that information, the EPA says more testing needs to be done. That's why they're here.
Today we're coming back, we're coring down into the ground several feet, collecting soil samples, collecting water samples. We're resampling the pond just to make sure that we've not missed anything.
The Local 4 Defender drone spotted this black van going back and forth on the property. It was testing for radiation.
This big black box is a big giant detector pack.
The health physicist explained how it worked.
This could tell the difference between uranium metal and uranium like you would find in prospecting.
Okay. The EPA is also using ground-penetrating radar to find potential basements. Now remember, this site had a laboratory on it back in the 40s to build uranium rods that were supposed to be used in the making of the first atomic bomb.
Well, there's conflicting information about basements here. There are some change orders that talk about crushed concrete put into a basement. So, I don't know the answer. Right. There might is, but that's why we're looking.
Now, probing for those basements is really an interesting part of these tests. So many still wonder exactly what was done with those old buildings on that site that housed the uranium. Were they demolished and taken away? Were they buried? Demolition records so far have not been found. So there's this big concern exactly about how this is connected to it's called the Manhattan Project. Oh, and by the way, our Click-On team did a really big overhaul in terms of what the Manhattan Project is, what they worked on, where they worked in Detroit. So definitely want to check that out. We posted that on Click-On.
On the features page,
yeah. And I know Detroit Bulk Storage had a remediation plan that was due. What's the latest with that?
They handed it in on Friday. I talked with Eagle late today. They said they still are sifting through it. It is very detailed, but they think they're going to have an answer on whether or not it is acceptable by tomorrow, and I'll let you know.
We know you'll keep us posted. Thanks, Karen.
The Local 4 Defenders have learned in the past 3 weeks the city has completed 152 inspections along the riverfront. 5 of those properties have been operating with unsafe conditions and no certificate of compliance. 3 of them operating illegally. The city has issued 401 violations to those 5 properties, with emergency violations totaling $162,895. The defenders have also learned the second remediation plan that was submitted to Eagle from Revere Dock and Detroit Bulk Storage has been rejected. Eagle said the 20-foot silt curtain that was placed to stop the contaminated soil from spilling into the river is not performing satisfactorily. And the sinkhole at the site may be allowing additional materials from the property, including contaminated soils, to enter the river. Now remember, that soil has uranium and other heavy metals in it, which has Candace Miller very concerned.
If you have uranium going into the Detroit River, which is a water supply source, would you consider that a priority? I think I would.
The Local 4 Defenders have learned a deal is done to fix the Detroit riverfront where a dock collapsed, spilling contaminated soil into the river. The company will pay a fine and put in a new seawall. But as Defender Karen Drew explains, the agreement does not mean the company admits to violating any laws.
This is what the land along the riverfront looked like after the dock collapsed last winter. A green ponded area formed. The concern? What could have spilled into the Detroit River?
This fine is for $200.
I see a guy in security. He's probably going to try to kick me off.
The Local 4 Defenders have been exposing the violations from the company for months. Just today, a major break in the case. Revere Dock LLC, a company that owns the West Jefferson Avenue property, has signed an administrative consent agreement with Eagle. The terms? Revere Dock pays a $60,000 fine and receives a permit to proceed with its restoration plan.
We want to make sure that the cleanup is going to proceed and that it's handled in a proper way.
Eagle says Revere Dock's plans include a new 600-foot steel seawall and removing sediment and bank failure material that spilled into the river after the collapse last November.
There are very strict parameters that they have to follow in terms of getting this material out of the river, finding a way to properly dispose of it, making sure that the water gets treated properly.
The consent agreement lists 4 alleged violations of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, but as part of the agreement, quote, Revere Dock and Eagle agree that the signing of this consent order is for settlement purposes only and does not constitute an admission by Revere Dock that the law has been violated.
They were amenable to it and they agreed to it, so we fully anticipate that they will move forward with all the parameters for the agreement.
As part of the deal, the restoration work at the site is expected to be done by next July. Of course, we'll stay on top of this and let you know what happens. I'm Karen Drew, Local 4 Defenders.
Okay, Karen, and the Local 4 Defenders reached out to Revere Dock for comment on the agreement with Eagle, and they said, quote, "We are pleased to be able to come to an agreement with the state, which allows us to now focus on building the new seawall per the state's highest standards as permitted last week. Work will begin on the new seawall as soon as feasible."